All right. Okay. I think we're live. Yay. Absolutely. All right, folks. Well, tonight I've got a special guest, but I'm going to introduce her fully in a moment. You have joined us here on the Sunday Sipper Club, where we gather at 6 p.m. Eastern, Toronto, New York time, every second Sunday to talk to the most interesting people in the world of wine. Now, as I said before, I introduce my guests fully. Let me know in the comments, where are you logging in from? You know I have an obsession with weather, so tell me, what's the weather there? What's in your glass? Here in Ottawa, it is a gorgeous Sunday night, and I wonder if I'll be able to drag people in from the deck or the dock or wherever you are. But maybe you dragged your iPad out there. That's what some people were doing in my private Facebook group for my students. Who knows? But I would love to hear from you. Let me go over to Facebook and see who's here, because you're already coming in. I got to mute myself so I don't hear myself in stereo. All right, guys. Andrea's here. Excellent. And Lori Sweet is here from Kingston. All right, guys. You guys are coming in quick and fast. All right, that's great. Okay, I'm just so glad this is working. We have a very special guest. So, our guest this evening is an award winning host of one of the most popular wine podcasts on the planet. It's called Wine for Normal People. Love it. She's also a certified sommelier by the Court of Master Sommeliers, a certified specialist of wine by the Society of Wine Educators, and co founder of the Underground Wine Events, which brings together wine lovers with terrific small artisanal wineries and a public speaker. These events are hosted around the United States. She's the author of the forthcoming book, Wine for Normal People, to be published by Chronicle Books this November 2019. She holds an MBA from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. You can hear her in the background. She's a live wire, and she's worked for one of the largest wineries on the planet with marketing and training. She thinks and talks about wine in such an unusual, candid, and refreshing way. I am so excited about this conversation. I know you're going to love it. And she joins me live now from her home in Raleigh, North Carolina. Welcome to the Sunday Sipper Club, Elizabeth Schneider. Hello. Hi. All right, cool. This is great. So I'm so pleased that the technology is working. Elizabeth, we've had our ups and downs. I know you're a techie, and you've come from the tech industry as well, and you know whereof I speak. So, yeah, I know. I know. It's great when it works because it's live, it's exciting, you're pushing the edge, and then sometimes you fall right over that edge. It's like, ouch, ow. So I love your concept of wine for normal people, but let's start with how you define normal people, especially when it comes to wine.
Yeah, I mean, this is a question I get all the time, which is people say they love saying, "Oh, I'm not normal," or whatever, if they're being cheeky. And my point about normal wine is that, like you, I did not start out in the wine industry. I had a good, I guess, 10 years out of the wine industry, just being a regular working person. So, I had a 9 to 5 job. Wine was something I was interested in. I took classes and I went to tastings and stuff like that. I was in Boston. And I just did not understand why people were so mean about it, why they seemed to want to hoard information, why nobody really wanted to share what I felt like it just seemed like such a strange thing. So then I went and worked for a big winery, and I was like, okay, you know what? They make all stripes of wine. Can't be snotty here, right? There's no possible way. They were total snots too. So then I was very frustrated. I had an opportunity to work on a training program for servers, and I had been a server. So I spent a lot of time in catering, serving, and bartending and stuff like that. So I really understood that world, and I understood that you need to come at this from a place of, okay, you know what? people have other stuff going on in their lives, and wine is important to them as a hobby, but it's not the only thing that they have. So if you do something in wine, if you're trying to explain things, you might have to explain it 3 or 4 times because it's not top of mind to them. They're not like you and I, or every day we're, reading these big books and talking to producers and talking about really esoteric. They don't know. I mean, you got to remind them of stuff. And there's no shame in that. That doesn't make them stupid. It doesn't mean they should be talked down to. Many of these people are way smarter than anybody in the wine industry. And so the concept for Wine for Normal People is like, how about just talking to people who have other stuff going on in their lives, who are intelligent? I don't do and I don't mean to disparage anybody else, but I'm not a dummies person. I'm not like going to treat you like you're stupid. I'm going to treat you like you're an intelligent person, and you might just not know about this topic. So I come to you where you are, right? I mean,
absolutely. No, that's great. That's sound because, and I noticed in your podcast, when you'd bring up words like terroir, you'd redefine them because, the listeners, they're intelligent, but as you say, they've got other things going on in their life. They don't have a handy wine dictionary where they use terroir in common everyday language. And
I'm only laughing because here's a little inside behind the music. I don't like the wine industry that much. And there was a very prominent person in the wine industry. Really, I feel like consumers regular wine drinkers would never know who this person is. But they wrote up the podcast and they were like, oh, Schneider redefines the terms all the time. It's so mundane and stupid, and her pronunciation is ridiculous. And I'm thinking to myself, God, this is somebody who does not understand audio, because sometimes if someone's trying to get a wine and you say it with some crazy accent, they're not going to know what the heck you're talking about. That's A. And B, it's like, yes, I am redefining it because I'm sorry, but Michael in New Jersey, who is working in biotech, is thinking about that. And maybe he forgot what terroir was. So I'm just going to give you a 1 second, description of it so you know what it is.
Absolutely. It's just good journalism too. Like people, top-notch journalists, whatever, for the New York Times, wherever, define their terms when it's jargon. It's insider jargon.
Right.
You don't just proceed like everybody knows, and it's a club that we all belong to. And we'll get to more clubbiness in a minute too. But in the meantime, I just want to welcome Douglas Trapasso, who says hi, Elizabeth and Nat.
Douglas is my oldest listener. He was the first listener I ever had.
Fantastic. You've brought your peeps. Okay. Yes. Beautiful weather here in Chicago. Fortunately, the rain has held up. Anne is here from Halifax, where it's rainy. Jason Davies is in London, UK. He is a trooper who logs in at midnight his time every time. I mean, Jason, you're the bomb. It's super hot. And, you're in New York, Jason. Okay. Usually you're in the UK. Okay. Beverly Aslison is here from SoCal, Southern California. And Lori Sweet is with Silvio, and it's sunny in Kingston. Andrea Shapiro, can't wait for tonight's conversation. A big hello to Elizabeth.
Hello.
Can you all, do you guys not hear Elizabeth? Let's see now.
You can hear me, right, Natalie?
Yeah, I can hear you. Let's see if anybody else is hearing you.
Say something?
Let's see that. Douglas says, we've never talked about that, Elizabeth. Okay, but they seem to be hearing you maybe when we're side by side. Guys, can you hear us when we're side by side like this right now? And you can talk there, Elizabeth. I think they were hearing that part. Right? Okay.
Hear us? We'll talk all at the same time. Everybody talk at the same time.
Everybody talk at the same Oh, God. All right. Yeah, you should be, they should be hearing you, but let me know. I'll just type in let me know, can you hear her?
Yep.
Okay. Let's see if anything. Oh, now it sounds good. Okay. So maybe it's when you're on the single shot. I don't know. Okay, let's stay on the double shot here. So, okay, good. Rochelle is here. We're all good. I'm just going to keep it on this 2-shot here. Right. So now just trying to find my place again. Guys, did you hear the story where she was talking about terroir on her podcast and a review? Maybe just give us a quick recap of that, and then we'll just stay on this double shot, Elizabeth.
Absolutely. So
Okay.
I was saying that I was very happy that Natalie had said that she appreciates the fact that I redefine terms in the podcast, because I was criticized very harshly by somebody from a big wine critic person, and who I don't pay attention to those people. I don't like those people. Those people's audience is really not my audience or the people that I'm trying to reach. And the person said that I was repetitive in defining terms and mundane and ridiculous for continuing to, and my pronunciation was terrible but my point was, again, if someone is listening and they're trying to figure out what the heck I'm saying so that they can buy wine, then I have to Americanize it often. And I also don't speak French. I speak Spanish and a little bit of Italian. So, that's a struggle for me, just like every other normal person. And the other thing is, I was saying, someone whose job is not in wine may not remember some term that is so rote for a wine person. Yeah. And if you're not so into it, it's not like your everyday thing, then you might just need to be reminded. And I don't have a problem with that, but I was really surprised. And it reminded me that there's this is exactly why I do what I do. It's just a huge difference.
Absolutely. Yeah. And as I was saying, professional top-notch journalists, like for the New York Times or wherever, whatever outlet, define their terms. They don't use inside baseball jargon and assume their audience knows it. And yet they're not talking down when they define these terms. If they're talking about bioethics or whatever, it's good journalism to define your terms every time.
Yep. I mean, it's kind of silly, but again, there's a lot of very strange things that happen in wine journalism also, like things that have been perpetrated for a long time that are not, I mean, I don't think people are purposely misleading people, but when you actually go to the region and learn about stuff. I mean, one of the major things that people talk about, like, here's a great example, rivers, right? People always talk about, okay, wine regions are in rivers. Why are wine regions on rivers? And people say, well, they reflect heat. But they don't reflect heat, they reflect light, right? So light is what helps with photosynthesis, not heat. But we hear that over and over again, even from very well-established sources. So it seems to me that I feel like in the, way too long that I've been in this industry, I've learned that there are things that keep happening, these narratives that keep going on, and it's within this insider baseball. So I'm happy sort of not to be a part of that in a way. I don't want to get caught up in that.
So why is that perpetuated? Is it just lazy not checking the facts, or is it just whatever? Like, why?
What happens? So the authority, whoever that may be, writes a book on it and they put it in. And then when you go to the region or when you're talking to farmers, then they tell you what it actually is. And then it makes sense because in biology, we all learn that light is important for photosynthesis. Heat is not a part of that. So we hear this narrative over and over again. And then it winds up in books because one person wrote it. And, honestly, that's how wine stuff is done. So everything is, right? We're all just iterating off of other people's work, right? So all of the authorities now, well, okay, so, 50 or 40 years ago, it was Clive Coates, and then it was Hugh Johnson, and now it's Jancis Robinson. And so, this goes on and on and on, and they're iterating off of one another's work. So what happened 40 years ago, we've learned more, but sometimes I feel like it's not always quite updated.
Yeah. And
I'm like, what?
And you are so transparent and so bold in what you're willing to talk about, Elizabeth. I don't want to get you in hot water, but do you think that these big authorities are just taking received wisdom? Like, is that what's happening? It's like
No, I really don't know. I'm sure, look, these are not dumb people, right? These are people who are intelligent. I'm sure they're doing their own research, but they also are not always updating their own books, which I'm sure that too from Insider Baseball, right? So there's a lot of people that these are very large books. They're not doing all of that. No. So they're working off of information that they had before. But, again, I don't want people to go to these sources and be like, oh my gosh, I need to question everything. It's just that over the course of time, most of it is correct. I don't want to make some sort of big scandal out of this, but there are a few things that I feel like keep getting perpetuated that are like that, but that's just not right. Like it's either not right or it's not explained very well.
Right.
And so it may be the latter, but I don't think it's anything malicious. I just think that it just keeps going on. And then you read the worst thing about it, though, is that everyone is certification bananas right now. And a lot of that is inside of the certification stuff, right? Because they're getting it all off of that. And they may be working off of old versions or whatever. So I think it's a little bit of a problem, but it's not like a huge scandal. Most of the information is correct. It's just sometimes when I'm talking to people from around the world and I say something that I have researched in a book, they're like, no, that's not right. We hear that all the time from English journalists or whatever, but that's not right. That's not actually true. So it does help to get that other perspective, I think.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about certifications in a minute. I'm just going to acknowledge some of the many comments that are here. They're just loving this conversation. Let's see. Douglas, we've never talked about that, Elizabeth, but were there any journalists that you read and admired that kind of inspired the direction you went with your blog and podcast? We're going to come to that in a minute, Elizabeth. I just want to acknowledge some of the other folks who are here. Deb in in BC is here with a Pinot Blanc. Mike, he can hear us, but occasionally out of sync, but that's okay. Mike says, if your friends don't consider you normal, can you still watch? Yes, Mike, you can. You have a special...
Go back and listen to the first part.
Special pass for tonight, Mike. Mike's very normal and very not normal in the best sense. Okay, Donna Mae Wasson is here. John Morrison, sound is good. Picture is interesting. Okay. Fred Clift, audio is okay. The screenshots are out of sync. That's okay. As long as you can hear us, right? Good, because we will turn this into a podcast. So let's talk about, and folks, were you able to hear Elizabeth when she was on a single shot? Let me know that. I won't go back to the single shot if you could not hear her when she was on the single shot. I'll keep it on the side-by-side for now. But Elizabeth, you sort of alluded to it, because I want to get to your book, but you've already brought up certification. So we've got Master of Wine, we've got Master Sommelier, very prestigious designations in the wine business. Do you think they are professional designations? Well, they are, but in the sense of, are they like an MBA, which both you and I hold, or are they something else?
Well, I would actually like to have this conversation with you and not have it be like an interview type thing, because I mean, we both have MBAs, right? Mm-hmm. We both went through the grind. It is not easy to get an MBA. No. It's a lot of hours of hard work. It's a lot of hours of study. It's things that you don't understand. I don't, at least for me, there were some things that I skated on the edge of. Thank God, goodness, I passed, right?
Right.
But for the most part, it is a very intense course of study. My first year at Chapel Hill, I mean, I probably slept like 3 hours a night. It was just brutal. Absolutely brutal. And at the end, when you finally get the paper, everyone has been through that. Now, not everyone has worked as hard, but everyone has done the work to get there. I also take, and so you probably know people in finance, right? Mm-hmm. The CFA, right. The Certified Financial Advisor. It's widely regarded as the hardest professional exam that there is. My sister's an attorney. She had to take the bar in Massachusetts, not an easy bar. But the pass rates for these are in certainly the double digits. And although the CFA, I think, is like more like 40% or 30% first time, I'm not really sure, maybe some of the listeners know. And the bar is much higher, right? The bar exam, not the bar, like the actual bar. But I don't know that to the point of the professional certification, from what I understand, is let's get a group of people who will study very hard, and they will acquire knowledge that we think will make them better professionals. And then they will take this exam and they will go out into the world and be better professionals. Right.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I mean, like when I think about my friends that have taken the CFA exam and struggled and, failed and passed and whatever, that's the whole goal, right? The goal is eventually they want to make more money, blah, 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 whatever. I don't know any other exam besides the Master of Wine and the Master Sommelier where the pass rate is 3 to 7%.
3 to 7%. That is shockingly low.
That's not a professional certification.
What
That's
is it
a club.
then?
That's
Okay.
a club,
It's a
right?
club.
So it has to be, because again, I am only taking, I'm taking it out of the wine context, and I'm taking this as like a regular person. As you're looking at certifications, that's not a professional certification, because if most people who are very good in the business cannot achieve that, then it's something besides a professional certification, right? Because there are many people. So, we have to ask ourselves, who is administering an exam that is that difficult that people can't pass it? How many times are people taking it? How much money is involved in taking and retaking it? Who is deciding how difficult this material is? And does it actually make you a better professional? And my argument would be, and again, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to like turn the tables and ask you, Natalie, also, because a lot of people have taken these exams, is what does it do to these people? I mean, I feel like some of the best wine professionals I know cannot achieve this. I have heard, buzzy rumors that it's incredibly political, and not so much the Master of Wine. The Master of Wine is a little bit more straightforward, but the Master Sommelier is incredibly political. It's an oral exam. They can decide, and service. I mean, people can decide whatever they want. If they want you in the club, you get in the club. If they don't want you in the club, they don't want you in the club. And by the way, when was the last time you saw somebody on the floor of a restaurant ask, can you tell me all of the appellations of China?
So esoteric information that really doesn't have real world practical application on most restaurant floors. As you say, it should be a designation that allows you to do your job better as a sommelier, presumably.
Right?
Yeah. So people do go into other spheres after getting this designation, but most are working somms. So yeah, right. I have to agree with you.
And I feel bad. And the other thing that is not taken, like Bianca Bosker's book, Cork Dork, actually did a really good job of showing this. I mean, these people don't make that much money. So now you're asking them to spend all this money on exams, all this money on wine, all their time. They become quite disconnected. I mean, that Somm movie showed that. I couldn't really watch past the first one because it was just, it really shows the bad side of the wine industry, that after a while, these people become so obsessed with this one thing that how are they going to connect with us at the table? How will they be able to relate to us without being snobby, without looking down on us because we ask questions like, I had someone tell me the other day, like when they first started out in wine, somebody said, you should ask for the sommelier. And they said, is that a red wine? that is, but some people are there, right? So like, right. How do you can't possibly bridge that gap if you're at this level. And yet, here we are. And so I think all of that needs to change. I also wish that there were more options for consumers who wanted to learn. I think the WSET, the Wine and Spirits Education Trust, has done a pretty good job of providing an education path for people. But, I just don't think there's enough options available. And everyone thinks that if you get a certification, that somehow makes you superior to people. Right. And I don't think that's true. I'm sorry. I know a lot of really great wine professionals who have no certifications.
Right, exactly. And writers who don't have any certifications, but have learned.
You don't need it. You have to be smart,
Yeah.
There's no replacement for smart.
There's no replacement for smart, and there's no solution for dumb. I can't help you. Anyway, that's what my grade 7 teacher used to say. Yeah, there's no fix for dumb. But we've got Dave Essie, who is logging in, and Donna, as I mentioned. Lori Sweet says, super interesting topics, great points. Mike Welling, who also has an MBA from my alma mater, Western. Excellent point about the professional certification. Makes the sommelier designation a bit like the art world. Very subjective. Would you agree?
Yes, I think so.
Absolutely, yeah. Mike. Like, it's just, when I, personally, Elizabeth, when I went for an MBA, I had a soft, artsy-fartsy background. I studied, English at...
I didn't study. I was poli-sci, but I went to Wesleyan in Connecticut. You can't get more liberal arts than that.
That's a great school. And absolutely. I did PR, and then I did English. And I thought, I'm going to be in the velvet ghetto forever if I don't get an MBA that says, yes, I can do other things than be press release lady. And I'm not trying to disparage public relations, which is a really great field for a lot of people and a lot of women. But I thought I've got to cement it in with MBA. But that was the intention, not to lord it over people with butterfly swaps at dinner, like to talk about whatever,
The only time I ever talk about it is because I went to Carolinas and I live in Raleigh now, and Raleigh is right next to Chapel Hill. So, it's a connection that I have to this area.
Yeah.
But it did help enormously in starting my own business and giving me a lot of courage, and also being able to, it did other things for me, right? In fact, in some ways, funny enough, I also was like, God, I don't have the skills to pay the bills here. Like I am not able to make this work, put all the pieces together. I need, there's some definite pieces of information that are missing out of my education here. So that is why I wanted to go back, actually, really to learn. And more financial opportunity, of course, but the things that I took away were things I never, ever thought I could, really cementing in my head that, integrity in business is really important. Teamwork in business is really important. Understanding if you're not I am not somebody who ever wants to have a big company or a lot of employees. I could barely manage a part-time virtual assistant. So I do better working on my own. These are things that I learned while I was there, and also confidence. So I think that this is the exact opposite of what the master sommelier gives people. Yeah. It gives them a lack of confidence, right? It makes them feel terrible about themselves, which is not where we want to be in this industry. We need to really look, and actually, as drinkers, we also need to question that. Mm-hmm. We cannot look at people who have certifications and say, "Oh, you're so much smarter than somebody else." We need to be like, "Well, fine, you took a test, but what do you know?"
Right. And how do you apply it in relation to me as the customer? It doesn't matter how impressive you are. Boy, people have some serious comments here.
Are they mad?
Which is great. No, they're loving it. They are loving it. Don't worry, Elizabeth. I will read them out to you. Andrea, haha, great point, Elizabeth. So that was on something you said. Deb says, well, I think the first thing is it's truly about the customer, not about the sum. I think it's important to acknowledge an accomplishment, but then move on and pass that knowledge along, providing the person wants to know. And Dave says, those who are certified have a huge air of arrogance. Catherine Fleming has joined us. Lori Cosma is here from Edmonton, where it's 20 degrees. And she says, I'm really liking what Elizabeth is saying. So
Thank you.
You've got a very supportive crowd here, Elizabeth.
That's nice. I'm sure that in the rerun, some people will be like, wow, this person is just jealous that she's not a master sommelier. I have heard that before. I've heard that comment before, but I started down that path. I'm a certified sommelier. And once I saw what was ahead of me, I was like, I'm not doing that. I didn't want to.
Yeah,
it didn't make sense. Yeah.
And do you think at all, so we've talked about maybe it's an exclusive club, but this 3 to 7% pass rate, is it a money grab scheme? Is that at all part of it? I know we can't read the minds, so you can never read minds and intentions. So that's sort of an unfair question. But sometimes I wonder personally, it's okay, that is just insane.
Honestly, if we had thought of this, we would be making a lot of money. Let's face it.
Let's talk after.
I don't think it started like that. I don't think that there was somebody in the UK that was like, I think it genuinely started out like they had a problem in the UK because that's where all this stuff started. They had a problem in the UK that there were a lot of people that just didn't know what was going on. So they wanted to, sort of formalize it. But the book, I wonder where it is. It's hilarious. I would love to quote it for you because it's if the Queen, and this is for Americans too and Canadians, if the Queen comes into your restaurant, say the first time you address her is by Your Majesty, and then after that you call her ma'am.
Oh.
And it's really? I'm not sure that most people need to know that, but that's the official book that they recommend.
Wow, that is esoteric. All right, that's fascinating. I could go on with that forever, down that rabbit hole, which I find fascinating. But to broaden it out a little bit, you've got a book coming out in November called Wine for Normal People. Yay!
Yes, I have the cover mock-up here.
You
it's
do?
It's
awesome.
It's just on paper. I'm sorry.
Gotcha.
Oh
that's
my gosh,
okay.
My son is.
That's all right. No worries. We can see it. Absolutely.
Yep.
So, Elizabeth, that's the name of your podcast. So tell us, this has been a while in the making. Tell us what the inspiration was for this. There's a lot of primers out there on wine. did you feel that no one was talking to normal people, or what triggered that idea for this book?
It started actually when I was at the big winery and I was doing training for that server training.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, gosh, like what books could we use? And people also, as I started the podcast, kept saying, so what books would you recommend? And I'm like, I have one, like Karen McNeil's The Wine Bible, but that's so comprehensive. It's tough, right? And it is a wonderful book, but it doesn't filter the information for you. It just tells you the information, which again is the point of that book. And it's a wonderful book. Okay. So that is like not throwing shade on the Wine Bible at all.
No.
The Dummy series, I mean, I guess that's basic information, but it is super basic. And then I feel like there was nothing in that middle ground at all. I'm like looking at, everybody wants to write a real specific wine book these days. So there's stuff on grapes and wine. And then there's the tome writers, as I call them, like I've already mentioned them, Hugh Johnson and Clive Coates, Jancis Robinson, Oz Clarke. These people, Oz Clarke is a little bit more casual, but they write these tomes, these huge freaking books that like, who wants to plow through that? And then if you don't know the jargon, then you got to look it up. I mean, it's ridiculous. So I just thought, you know what? Why not reinvent the wheel? Why not reinvent the wheel?
Good for you. No, it's true. Like when I think about it, the way you frame it, it's true. There's the spectrum, there's the tomes, and Karen McNeil's more accessible, but a thick book. And she will be a guest in June, by the way, for folks who are listening. I can't wait. But so you've got that end of the spectrum, and then you've got the Wine for Dummies or even shorter, simpler books. You're right. I don't know that there's something in the middle. And folks, if you're watching, listening, and even if you're watching the replay, let us know. Is there something in the middle? I'm not sure I can come up with anything.
I'm pretty sure there's not. I had to do a lot of research for the book proposal to get it sold.
Okay.
I'm telling you, there's very, very little, if anything. I mean, people like to write wine memoirs and they like to write wine stories and things like that, but there isn't a whole lot. And I guess the other thing is that I have a point of view, and a lot of the things in the book are opinionated, and I don't really, I am not apologetic about it. I make it very clear that it's my opinion, but, I say ridiculous things about, I mean, I think my favorite, like the best thing that I came up with in the book is that, like, why don't the grapes that you eat from the grocery store taste anything like wine? Mm-hmm. And I say that it's because it's the same reason that you have a dog for a pet, but not a wolf. They're the same species, but or the same genus, but you don't want that. The difference between them is too much, right? You want the dog, you do not want the wolf. So, I mean, we use, like, I try to use a lot of analogies like that to say, I mean, wine is a difficult subject and it's a high barrier to entry. Anybody that tells you that wine is easy is ridiculous. It's not. And you have to know something to get in. It's just like where you get your knowledge and how understanding or for lack of a better word, like normal or nice or kind someone is going to be towards you when you don't know something.
Absolutely.
Like, I told that story about this guy that said that he thought a sommelier was a kind of wine that he should order. And the thing that actually struck me about that, just coming from my orientation, was like, I was so angry at the friend who recommended that and then didn't immediately write back to that guy and say, no, this is what it is. Like, she just left him hanging there. And I think that that's terrible. I think that's really unfair. So,
absolutely. No, I love your comparisons, Elizabeth, and you're talking in word pictures, which I absolutely love. Dog versus wolf. It's so concrete. Your book's going to be great. And I'm going to ask you more about that. I'm just going to acknowledge that Gus Clemens is here from Texas. He's a writer as well. You may know Elizabeth. And he'll be on the show in the fall. Rinaldo Fonseca is here from Puerto Rico. Elizabeth McSween. I'll always respect that wine is subjective, yet wonderfully interesting. But at the end of the day, it only matters what you like, not what someone tells you to like. This is wonderful. She's liking the discussion.
That's nice.
Bonita's here. Dave says, where is Elizabeth's podcast? So, Dave, I don't know if you're familiar with how to access podcasts, but they're on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and so on. Wherever podcasts can be heard.
Well, that's right. My favorite one is Overcast.
Overcast.
Yes.
And you know, now Google's got with the game, Elizabeth, and you can Google your podcast name. So Elizabeth's is Wine for Normal People, and you can add the word podcast, but I'll bet it'll come up even if you just use the word words Wine for Normal People.
And you can also go on if you want to look at the whole back catalog, you can go on winefornormalpeople.com and click on the homepage. There's a little button for listen now. And it doesn't make you listen right then. You can go to the catalog of all of the, almost 300 episodes that we have.
300. Oh my gosh. How long have you been doing podcasts?
Oh, since 2011.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic, Elizabeth. I just started a baby podcast in December, so it's just getting going. It's called Unreserved Wine Talk, but it's nowhere in your league in terms of listenership. Well, no, it's true. You've been going a long time.
I've been around a long time. I've been doing this a long time. And, as I was telling you, I only really started interviewing people recently. The show is mostly not interview, it's mostly education. Yeah. So, the interview portion of it has become bigger because as we've covered so many topics, it's more, I think now it's more important to talk to the people who address those topics. But my husband is my co-host and we just, we're going to.
Yeah, you're good together on the podcast and otherwise, I'm sure. Why do you call him MC Ice, by the way? I'm just curious.
He's in real estate development. And so when he first started, so I had another co-host and he got too busy. He was actually in the wine industry. He got too busy and couldn't do it anymore. So I was having a good time doing it. We were doing really well. So I said to my husband, you have a really good voice. You should come on. You're also incredibly normal. You are very good for this. You need to come on to the show. And so dragging, kicking, and screaming, even to this day, it's sometimes hard to get him to record. He came on and I said, let's use a pseudonym for you in case the podcast gets big and you're trying to do a real estate deal and people are like, hey, are you, his name? And I was like, let's just give you your college nickname, MC Ice, because it has to do with his first two initials and his last name is long and complicated and it sounds like ice. Okay. So that's how it came about. But yes, he is a total trooper. I could never do anything that I've done without him. So he is fantastic.
Cool. I just thought he was a rapper or something on weekends.
Everyone thinks that, yeah. People think he's tatted up. He's like the guy in the polo shirt. He's from the South.
Okay. Mike Welling says, Elizabeth would enjoy Red, White, and Drunk All Over. Not a huge tome, but informative. Thank you, Mike. That was a plug. Douglas has posted the link, winefornormalpeople.com. Thank you, Douglas.
Thank you, Douglas.
And all right, Gus. Jim Clark is here. Hello, Jim. All right, so getting back to our conversation, and folks, I've gotten off track with the technology again, but please take a moment to share this video and comment on it. Share it with your friends and family, because as you know, we always give out a prize for those who share. We'll announce the winner in 2 weeks' time when we have our next guest. So you'll want to do that. And let's continue. Now, let's go back to your book, Elizabeth. So tell us a bit more about that. What was the most surprising thing or insight you learned about wine while you were researching for your new forthcoming book, Wine for Normal People?
Yay. And here's the cover once again.
Yay. There it is.
The sign. Yes. So, the book actually, the first chunk of the book is wine vocabulary, which I know a lot of people put in the back in the glossary, but I think it's incredibly important not to do that. So wine speak is the first chapter. And then I go into other things like how wine gets its flavor, tasting terms, things like that. And then, the differences between old and new world. The bulk of the book is the region by region breakdown and basically put into really normal wine terms. And so some of the more fascinating things that I learned while researching were, historical thing. I love history. So all of the historical things about the wine regions, the whole history of Champagne, for instance, I find just incredibly fascinating. I
Why
wanted
is
to
that?
talk about just that, they've spent so much time trying to get bubbles out of the wine. Dom Perignon was adamant. I mean, if that guy came back today and saw that his name was on that bottle, he perfected the art of making white wine from red grapes, because in Champagne it was too cold to make really good red grapes, and the white grapes really weren't very tasty either. So they felt that if they could make white wine out of red grapes, they could get the most flavor and really put their best foot forward. But they never wanted sparkle. Sparkle came by mistake. Sparkle came from stuck fermentations. And because of that, in the springtime, when things would pick up again, then they would have fizz in the wine. It was the British who were like, hey, we like the fizz in the wine. And that's just a very fascinating thing. Also, they had enormous riots before World War I, where they were fighting about who was included in Champagne. And, it's just a really, really fascinating story. But Champagne is, without the support of the British, probably would not be around. So.
Huh. Wow, that is interesting.
They deny that, but that's true.
And do you have a couple of tips from your book, things that we don't normally hear about with common wine advice that are unique to your book that you feel that you can share with us now?
I mean, the first thing I would say is, and I say this often on the podcast, is the opposite of what actually I think somebody just said in the comments. They're really not going to like me now, which is that I don't think you should drink what you like.
Oh.
I think it is the opposite of that. I think that if you just drink what you like, you wind up in a rut and you never try anything different or new. You don't take risks. And that is not the way to approach wine. Wine is an enormous world. There are a lot of things that are similar. There are things that you don't like now, but that you may like in 5 years. You might not like that Bordeaux right now. But maybe with increased drinking, you may get tired of larger, bigger, fuller bodied wines. And maybe you will like that Bordeaux eventually. Maybe you will like that Pinot Noir from Burgundy eventually. You cannot give up. You have to keep pushing yourself. And you have to go in every time you go into the wine store if you've got, a little bit of extra change. By the way, wine is so inexpensive now for what it is, for the quality we can get. You need to keep pushing yourself. So number one is don't drink what you like, because you will just keep drinking that. And that's not a good idea. So
that's great. Well, that's not going to elicit a heart emoji from certain people, but I like that. Don't drink what you like. But I get what you're saying. The point is experiment. Like, try to broaden your horizons. Don't get in a rut. I think that's good advice too.
Yes, absolutely. Two is that, when thinking about regions around the world and what to expect from them, I use the analogy of where you would wear a jacket during the day in the summertime. And I think that really can inform you as to how the wine is going to taste. So in other words, in the middle of a Napa summer, you are not going to be wearing a jacket. It's going to be blazing hot in the fields and in the vineyards. But potentially in the Loire, it might be cool. There might be breezes. It might be, in Champagne, in parts of Germany, maybe it will be hot, but it will generally cool down at some point during the day. And I think if you would think about places that you might need a jacket during the day, those are places that are going to have higher acidity wines that maybe pair better with food oftentimes, wines that are, kind of minerally, that are not fruit first, all of those kinds of things. So
that is great. I am loving this. This truly is a fresh perspective. The where would you wear a jacket in the day? The dog wolf. I'm liking that.
Strange person, I guess.
No, it's great. Strange is good. Strange is normal in wine. Gus says I've pre-ordered on Amazon. He's pre-ordered your book already. He's a columnist for a lot of papers in Texas, by the way.
That is so nice. Thank you.
Rock on, Elizabeth Schneider. And by the way, I agree that you always have to take risks with what you drink. John Morrison says, taste at every opportunity. Dave is asking what I'm drinking. I've got the Waterkloof from South Africa Cabernet. What do you have in your glass? You haven't had a chance.
I have an Altos di Sorona Albarino from, it is got to taste like salt water. I love it.
Salt water. Nice.
Like 92 degrees here. So Fahrenheit. And so just needed something really refreshing because I spent the whole day at the pool with my children. And so, yeah.
With your kids. Take a sip, Elizabeth. My goodness. I've been just keeping you talking while I can sip. But Lori Cosmo also likes Mark Oldman's Brave New World of Wine. So, yeah, guys, these are great comments. Peter Nielsen is here. Hello, Peter. So, Elizabeth, oh, wait a minute. Dave says, great point, Elizabeth. I was a cab only guy and someone pushed me into Pinot Noir. There are so many wines that are enjoyable, but without trying them, you'd never know. Yep, absolutely. Elizabeth, so obviously Gus has just done this. We can pre-order your book online now through Amazon, Borders, Barnes and Noble.
And you can ask your indie bookstore to get it. All sorts of different ways to do it. Yeah. So yes, you can pre-order it there. It will be released November 5th. If you pre-order it, you'll probably get it on November 5th, which is nice.
Cool.
And we actually are going to do a pre-order campaign.
Yes.
Natalie, if you want to, we can give away a book too, if you want.
Yay, that would be awesome. Awesome. So if you share this,
signed book.
This video. Oh, a signed book. Yes. Absolutely. Guys, share this video, comment, make it go viral. You could win one of Elizabeth's books. So continue, Elizabeth. What were you saying?
So we're going to do a pre-order campaign, and anybody. So we're getting it set up right now. So you have to sort of follow. If I hate being like the person that's like, follow me on social media, but if
just do it.
Follow any of the channels. So Wine for Normal People on Instagram and Facebook, and at Normal Wine on Twitter. If you follow on any of those channels. Or, you can just also send me an email. That's fine. We're going to have get on the news. There's a newsletter also. A lot of people are totally off social media these days. And so they're just doing newsletter, and that's fine too. I send it out once a month. It's I can't go more than that. So I'm telling you, like, I am a one woman show. So it is like, I can only do what I can do. Whatever one person can do is what I can do.
You can do a lot.
Yeah, hopefully. Right.
No, you can.
So I don't sleep much. So there's that. But then, we're going to do a pre-order campaign. So if you like the book and stuff like that, we're going to have an opportunity to mail, like take a little picture and send it to an email, and I will send you a signed book plate, which is like these little things that you can paste inside of the book, and it'll be signed and personalized. So I have committed to doing that. Even if it's like 5,000, I'll do it. I will do all of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the whole thing about, so first of all, it's hard to make a living as a writer, folks, just from experience. So this pre-order campaign is important for any author, because what happens is if you can pile up the orders on Amazon or Barnes and Noble or wherever, Chapters in Canada, by the way, Chapters Indigo.
Right, that's right.
That gives them an indication of whether they should push the book in store or even stock it. This is really vital. So the more pre-orders they get, the more it will go to number one on those respective sites the day it launches, the day you can actually get delivery or whatever, start fulfilling orders. So it's important to writers. So if you have any interest, and I think you should, she's a live wire. I love it. Just do it. Do you have an audio version, Elizabeth, of this book?
I am actually recording the audio version pretty soon. So yeah, of course. I mean, it's funny because it was like, so Audible, Amazon is doing it. And at first it was like, does she have to do an audition? And my agent was like, here are 200 auditions.
Yeah, that's right. She knows what she's doing.
Okay, I wrote the book and I'm a podcaster. This should be good. So they didn't even have a problem with it. They didn't make me audition for it formally, which is
for your own book. Great.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Deb's like, I'm the only one who's really going to understand the jokes anyway. So of course, because I couldn't write a book without some tongue-in-cheek humor. So.
No, people are going to love your style.
So.
Absolutely. Deb says, I agree. Pinot Noir was not my favorite wine, but after a year, I gave myself a year of experiencing, trying to understand it, trying out so many Pinots. I came to understand, and now I have my favorite Pinots as well as Cab Francs. Mike.
And by the way, it's interesting, I think, that everybody's saying Pinot, because I think that's where you end. I think that's a really hard one. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think when I think about, so I just taught, I teach live online wine classes, right? So I have groups of just like 20 people. I close it off so that I can have interaction with people. And so they get really nerdy, whatever. So I did Wines of Spain on Saturday night, rather, last night. God, I can't even remember remember, and that's why I have an Albarino, right? And so we all taste together, and usually people, you can do it in groups of 2 or 4 or whatever. And so the one wine that always comes to mind when people are saying, okay, I'm a cab drinker, I'm like, go and have a Monastrell from the south of, from Jumilla, which is in the southern part of Spain, because that is a step, or a Priorat, right? It's minerally and it's a step away from cab, but it's still in that vein. And so I think people should take calculated risks. I think it's really hard. Kudos to you for going right from cab to Pinot, because I think there's a lot of steps in between. Syrah is another one of them. And then you can slowly move to that. I think Pinot is very, very difficult. It comes in so many stripes. California Pinot has really almost nothing to do with Burgundy, in my opinion.
True.
Like a little bit of Santa Barbara, maybe you could see, but like most California Pinots really don't have anything to do with Burgundy. Oregon, despite the fact that it wants to say that there's a big link, I think they're 2 completely separate animals. New Zealand makes beautiful Pinot. I mean, you have a bunch of places making different Pinot Noir, but they're very, very distinct, and it's hard. And I think good for you guys for moving from cab to Pinot.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So, and then Mike says, Mike is one of my online wine course students, so we both do that as well, Elizabeth. He's asking you if you know or have tasted many wines from Canada, and if so, what are your thoughts?
So I have not, believe it or not, I'm sure you know this, it's very difficult to get wines from Canada here, right? So so I've had limited exposure. I did a trip up to Okanagan. And if you do listen to that podcast, you will never be my friend again, because I got so much flack from that. So the wines of
Why did you get flack from that? I have to ask.
Because the wines of British Columbia brought me up there, and I love them. They're the nicest people ever, and I'm not disparaging them. However, they brought me up with some travel bloggers. And what we did was we went to like a lot of really gimmicky wineries that were around the lake. And we did not go to some of in what I think are probably the most promising areas in BC, Soyos and Oliver, and those places that are down south in the Golden Bench. Is that what it's called?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Area. Yeah. I mean, those wines. So every night at dinner, after tasting these wines, which were really not very good. It was gorgeous, absolutely breathtaking, but the wines were not very good. I would be like, can we please order something from Oliver or Soyos? Can we have something from, and those wines really, I think have enormous potential. However, the stuff that's a little bit farther north, I think it's harder. It's not there yet, and I don't know if it's going to get there. That's my opinion. You hate me for it if you want. Niagara is completely different, and I have not had an opportunity to have a lot of still wines from there. I've had a lot of dessert wines from there, just because they're not really available. So the closest I've gotten is the Finger Lakes. I have not had a ton of wines. I have a couple of Cab Francs from up there, a few Rieslings, nothing big. So I do need to make a trip up there, but I do love Finger Lakes. I know that the area of Niagara, I have had some of the wines, and I think that they have great potential.
They do. Yeah, you do need a trip up there. Yeah, absolutely.
But it's hard to get them here. So that's one thing you definitely need to know. They're not the stuff from or actually from everywhere. It's just that I happen to be in New York, so that was how I was able to try stuff from Niagara. Yeah.
And that's something we both keep in mind. Like, are you going to write about a wine no one can drink? I mean, yes, people want you to like see the region, but if your readers or your listeners, whatever, can't get it, it seems like an exercise in frustration.
It is. And the only thing that we have that I'm not sure that you guys have, because your laws are more restrictive in Canada, is that a lot of states do overlook the law that you can ship from a retailer out of state.
Right. Yeah, we're going through that. There's a whole tangle of legislation that is just, please.
And we have a Supreme Court case that is pending on this right now.
Okay.
And one of the guests that I have on a fairly regular basis to update us on stuff like this is this guy, Tom Wark, who's the head of the National Association of Wine Retailers. Yeah. And he has helped write the briefs to bring this to the court. And this is not a political thing, right? This is not I'm sure that you guys must think we are, well, you probably always think we're crazy, but this is, we're going through a really crazy time right now. But this is, from a Supreme Court perspective, this is not a political decision. It really is interpretation. So this is not, retailers on the Democrat side and distributors on the Republican side. This is something that really has to do with something called the Commerce Clause in the United States Constitution. It's already been ruled on. We're just trying to get an extra, okay, now retailers can ship without anybody obstructing them because the states all want to obstruct. So we're hoping the decision should come out in another couple weeks. And if that opens up, then that means that everybody in the United States can order wines from bigger markets like Chicago and from New York and from California, places in California, LA, where you have bigger access to stuff. And that would be fantastic, because then if I do talk about a really crazy small wine, everyone can get it, which right now is harder.
And hopefully we'll take a note out of your book in Canada if we see that pass. So
yeah,
who knows,
that would
right?
be great, right? Yeah. I mean, we're adults. I don't even want to get started on this, but it just drives me nuts that they really, when you get wine delivered to you, they check your ID. They're very strict about it. And I just feel like, this is a legal product. I mean, you can order a gun or a samurai sword online and no one has to sign for it. But
it's true. But that's the same up here in Canada. We had folks from the Canadian Vintners Association. It was just shocking. They did a test and they ordered a gun from across the country, got it. Wine, no.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it seems bizarre.
Okay. Jennifer Hill is here. Hi, Jen. Jen is a cousin of mine. Hello.
Oh, sweet.
Jeremy Simpson says, really looking forward to the book, Elizabeth. He's pre-ordered it. You're getting orders.
Jeremy, where have you been? I've missed you. Jeremy's one of my guys.
There you go. We got Gus pre-ordering. Jeremy. Who else? Peter Nielsen is going to check out your podcast. He listens to my podcast. He's one of my online course students. So we're going to share students and podcast listeners.
Awesome. Well, we can do something joint, because we're actually women in wine who are not competitive or
bet.
It's against each other, which is sometimes rare in this industry.
Yeah, the rising tide lifts all the boats. You know what? There's so much room for many books, many podcasts.
Yes. And I think that the people who feel competitive, I think this is a really funny thing. I think when I was younger, I used to feel worried about that. And now you just have to do whatever it is that you do feel is the right thing to do. You just do, as the kids say, you do. I'm a Gen Xer, so I don't say this, but you do you, right? You just be whoever you are. And I guess that, maybe at my own peril and your own peril, we build the brands around ourselves, or we build a shtick around ourselves. But, it is what it is. Everyone, the only difference between us and everybody else in the wine world and people that connect to us and others in the wine world is that we just present information in a different way. And,
absolutely. It's interesting that you said, yeah, and you and I both have built brands around our names. I have no intention ever of selling the brand. I am the brand. It'll die when I die. So, I'm not in it to flip it. So, but anyway, Lori Cosma, really looking forward to your book, Elizabeth. I always am looking for varietals and regions that I haven't tried before. Deb, a few in BC. She's listed some really great wines that she wants to mention. Paul Hollander is in here with Patty from Virginia. Mike, yes, wines across borders. Absolutely. Follow the money to understand the logic. Yep.
Oh, yes, we know this.
It's Memorial Weekend. That's right.
Yes,
that's in the United States. We had our Victoria Day weekend last weekend. So, I am so impressed that you all are here regardless. Well, Elizabeth, my goodness, it's 7:00 already, and I haven't even gotten to the other 56 questions.
I'm sorry. I'm a podcaster. I talk for a living, right?
You were a gift. You were a gift as a guest. Oh my gosh, really, seriously. Don't need to lead the horse to any water. The horse is just doing fine on its own.
As you can see, I'm quite thirsty. I drink all the time.
I didn't give you a chance. Elizabeth, is there anything we haven't covered that you'd like to mention right now before we wrap up?
No, I do want to say one really important thing to my listeners and fans. The one thing that keeps me going every single day and has kept this whole thing alive is the listeners and the readers and the fans. I'm getting a little misty talking about it. I I could not be, I'm not a religious person, I'm not saying this sort of in a religious way, but I could not be a more blessed person to have built a community of nicer, more kind of like-minded, wonderful, open people. And every day, and I really mean this, every single day, I am thankful, I laugh, I smile, and it has gotten me through so much in terms of self-doubt and wondering whether or not I should keep going. And, and any kind of hurdle with the book or anything else, the listeners and the supporters have meant more to me than I could possibly ever imagine. My level of gratitude is, I can't even say. So it's, I don't have the biggest audience in the wine world. I don't have, I'm not the most popular person, and I couldn't care less because I have some of the nicest people in my tribe. And I just want to thank them so much if they're watching this.
I say amen, and I'm not religious either, but amen. Amen to that. I get it. And Mike just tapped in with another comment. Authenticity rules in building any brand these days, and he knows whereof he speaks. He is an expert in that.
Awesome.
Elizabeth, it's been so great. So we can connect with you at winefornormalpeople.com and a variation on that on various social media channels. We can pre-order your book. Anywhere else that you want to mention where we can find you?
No, just, the podcast is available anywhere you get podcasts.
Yep.
And I also actually will write you back if you write to me. Usually it might take me a really long time because I'm so slow, but I will get back to you. The shorter the comment, the more likely you are to get something out of me.
That's great. Oh, Elizabeth, we want to talk to you again in the future, please.
I would love that. Thank you so much, Natalie. I'm such a fan of yours. You've been such a great, you have been so successful, and it's a real honor to be on your show.
It was fun. This was delightful. Thank you, Elizabeth. Okay. Bye for now then.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. All right, folks, hold on and we will just wrap up. Now, as you know, 2 weeks ago, the video, the tech wasn't with us, but so I don't have a draw, but that's okay. We will be back in 2 weeks' time, and I will continue to figure out these tech issues, but I'm so glad you all stuck with us tonight. That was so good. Your comments were excellent. And just please keep sharing this video, and we will draw for a winner in 2 weeks' time. You're welcome, Gail Johnston. Thanks for chiming in. Here, an anti-snob approach. It means a lot. Great. I'm glad. We will, Elizabeth and I will both hop into the comments after this. If you're watching the replay, still comment. We are there, and we will see your comments. We would love to hear from you. And you're welcome, Deb. And if you want to take your wine and food pairing to the next level, join me on a free online video class at nataliemaclean.com/class. All right. I will speak to you again soon. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Take care, guys. Thanks for being with us this week. Bye for now.